All right. So, what we were asked to do was to build a histogram, right? Given a list of data, right? And by the way, this is a really useful tool. It comes up in lots of different leak code style problems. So just being able to do this fluidly is something that we really want. All right. So, we start with this list. This is pretty typical. So we have these different candies: red, yellow, orange, more yellows, brown, red, blue, red. And essentially we want to write some code that's going to tell us how many of each, right? You can imagine like putting these candy, this is like each candy or color is on a different like playing card. We have a stack of cards. We want to put these cards into piles, and that way we can just count up. All right, we have three reds. That's one pile. Then we have like two yellows. That's another pile. Something like that. So how do we do something like this? This is the end result we want. It turns out, I guess there's three reds here and like three yellows. And if you're thinking about how to do this, for me, what always makes this easier is to like first build a skeleton of the structure and then construct the histogram. In other words, a good technique in these problems is think about the data structure that will make this easier. So I'll show you what we mean. So for instance, what if we can just first get a list of all the colors and then have the number like 0? Right, I'll show you. So I'll do red. Let's do blue first. Blue would be 0. Red is 0. Orange is 0. So everything is going to start off as 0. Brown is 0. Yellow. 0. So if we get somehow, we first construct this starting point. And if we first get to here, then I think the rest is pretty easy because we just have to like loop through each color, find the related color, and then increment the value by 1. All right. So the first step, we're basically dividing our problem into first step. 1, I say like build. I call this like the skeleton, right? Because it doesn't actually have the data we want, but it's the structure. Build the skeleton, and then 2 is fill in the data. All right. So let's try to figure out how we can do this, right? How can we start from our list of colors to then build this, get to this output? All right. So I think the first thing I would do, I guess I just get a unique list of the colors. We know how to do that, right? We just do candies, set the candies, and maybe wrap that in a list. So now we have a unique list of the colors. And then we can maybe create, let's call this even my like skeleton as a dictionary. Say for color in So for color in unique colors, what do we want to do? We want to set a key value pair of skeleton square bracket color equals the value 0. Right, so we go through every unique color. We go through blue, right? Start with blue. And we do, okay, this dictionary square bracket blue equals 0. And then we go to the next color. Brown, square bracket brown equals 0. And that should get me to that point. Okay. So just to review, we start with this list of candies. It has a bunch of different colors in it, and we want to build the skeleton. So then we get to a list of unique colors, which we get by essentially wrapping this in a set and then turning that set back into a list. Blue, brown, orange, red, yellow. Now we can go through each of our unique colors, set the corresponding value equal to 0. All right, so that's the skeleton part. Then once we have the skeleton, we said essentially what we can do is start with this original list, go through each color, and once we hit the color, right, so our first one is red, find red, increment this by 1. Right, then go to yellow, increment that by 1. Orange, increment it by 1. Yellow, increment it by 1. So now this is going to be 2. All right, so let's try to do that. That'll be 4 candy in the list of candies. So for each one of these candies, I'll just move this here for us. For each one of these candies, you want to take the skeleton, access the candy, right? And plus, I think we could do just plus equals 1. Right, so that's to increment in Python, right? We use this plus equals thing. And now let's see. Right, so we have 3 reds and 3 yellows. So we got red, red, red. And the way this worked is go through each one of these candies. Right, so red, so for each candy, go through red. Skeleton, square bracket, red, plus equals 1, right? Then red becomes 1. Then go to yellow, right? Plus equals 1. And then yellow becomes 1, and so on. So this is how we can build the histogram. And this is totally valid and maybe even like a great, I'd say this is probably what you should most have at your disposal. I just want to show you a couple other things that you can do if you want to make this easier. There are some other tools. So one is Python actually has this from keys method. Okay, so you can pass through a list of keys, and see this, it just creates a dictionary for you. Now, one issue here is you can't really increment a none value in Python. Like we can't say none plus 1. That will break. Right, so this won't work. But what we want to do is get back to that normal skeleton of red points to 0. So I think what you can do is, you see this from keys, the iterable is the list we're passing through, and the value, that's the default value. So you can see if we pass through nothing here, it will set the corresponding value as none. We want to change it to be 0. And now we're back to our skeleton. Okay? And then again, we can iterate through all these candies, right? The rest of this is the same. Iterate through all the candies, and then we get back there. So we just saw like a different, I should call this my skeleton. Sorry about that. All right. So we just saw, a different way to essentially create our skeleton, right? This like placeholder. So one, we did this by uniquing it and then kind of essentially doing it by hand, setting each value to 0. And then here we use the from keys, pass through the list, and then specify that the default value is 0. All right, so this is one nice tool, this from keys method. Another thing, remember I told you that this histogram thing is, building one is quite common. It turns out it's so common that Python gives us a tool that would do this for us out of the box, and that's from counter, is that right? From collections import counter. Okay, so this is a built-in library that we can use collections. We don't have to install anything. And then import counter. Counter must be a class, right? It's capitalized. And then what you can do is we can just initialize the class with the list of candies. And look, seems like it did everything for us. And then from there, we can, if you want, we can turn this thing into a dictionary, I'm guessing, right? And now we're back, right? Because before, this was an instance, but of the counter class. And I'm sure there's like different things we can ask of it. If we wanted to, we can use dir to find out. Keys, elements, items, right? But for our purpose, and in general, just turning this thing into a dictionary will work fine. And then we can just, we're kind of where we need to be. Right, so we showed you a couple different ways of how to build this histogram, right? Where we have the key and the amount, right? So there's red has 3, yellow has 3, right? And I said you can think of this as like putting our data into piles, and that's really useful. And you'll see that, we're about to do the ransom note lesson, so you'll see that there. And for those like going forward, I'd say at least practice doing it by hand. In other words, not using the from keys method.